I'll never forget the way it started. The block party had been the one tradition that stitched our neighborhood together, year after year. A street lined with string lights, music echoing off the houses, kids chasing each other in colorful dresses, the smell of barbecue in the air. This party wasn't just an event, it was ours. And then came the letter. I found it stuffed in my mailbox on a Wednesday morning. The HOA's crisp white paper screaming authority. For safety concerns, this year's neighborhood block party has been canceled. No explanation. No discussion, just a signature at the bottom. Linda Pierce, HOA Vice President Linda. If there was ever a face of control in our community, it was her. She always wore dark blazers like she was attending board meetings with the governor instead of supervising a bunch of suburban homes. Her lipstick was sharp, her words sharper. And she had a way of talking that made you feel like a school kid being scolded, even when you were just asking about recycling bins. When I read her letter, my stomach twisted. Canceling the block party wasn't just about safety. I knew Linda. This was about power. She hated noise, hated joy, and most of all, hated not being the center of attention. That night, as I stood on my porch, I saw my neighbor John shaking his head, holding the same letter. Across the street, kids were already crying to their parents, "No party this year?" The whole block felt darker, like someone had turned down the volume of our lives. I couldn't let it go. Not this time. "Hey," John called across, his face grim. "What do you think about this?" I held up my letter. "I think Linda's about to learn she messed with the wrong tradition." The next evening, I gathered a few neighbors in my living room. The lights were dim, but the tension was burning hot. Sarah, from 2 houses down, was furious. She'd already bought decorations. Mike, who always handled the sound system, looked defeated, muttering that maybe it was better not to push the HOA, but I couldn't stand the thought of letting Linda win. "Listen," I said, leaning forward. "She didn't cancel the idea of us gathering. She canceled their party, so let's give her something she can't control. Let's turn this block party into a protest." Everyone went silent. "A protest?" Sarah repeated, half smiling, half nervous. "Yeah," I said. "We'll still have music, food, everything, but it'll be more than a party. We'll make it a stand. Peaceful, loud, and united. She can't fine all of us. She can't silence all of us." The spark caught fire in their eyes. Sarah whispered, "I love this." Mike grinned slowly. "All right then, let's do it." But as the plan formed, I had no idea just how far Linda would go to stop us, and how far we'd have to push back to make our voices heard. And trust me, that was just the beginning. The next few days felt like we were living a double life. On the surface, the neighborhood looked quiet. Lawns neatly trimmed, cars tucked into driveways, and Linda doing her usual patrol with her clipboard and cold stare. But behind closed doors, we were plotting. I spent every evening huddled with neighbors in living rooms and garages, whispering like we were planning some underground rebellion. And in a way, we were. "Costumes," Sarah said one night, her voice low but firm. "We need to make it colorful. Bright dresses, masks, face paint, anything that shows joy. If this is a protest, it should look like life itself is pushing back against her gray rules." Mike nodded. "I'll set up the speakers. If she hates music, we'll give her the loudest night she's ever heard." The more we talked, the more it felt real. My heart raced at the thought of it. But with every plan we made, a shadow hung over us. Because Linda wasn't stupid. She had ears everywhere. 2 days later, she showed up at my door. I opened it to find her standing there, clipboard pressed to her chest like a shield, her lips curled in that fake neighborly smile. "Good evening," she said, her voice sugar-coated but poisonous underneath. "I've heard rumors." "Rumors?" I played dumb. My palms were already sweating. That certain people, she tilted her head, aren't taking the safety notice seriously. That they're planning something reckless. Something unlawful. I looked her dead in the eye. "We're just neighbors talking, Linda. Nothing more." Her smile didn't break, but her eyes narrowed. "Let me make myself clear. If there is any gathering, I will call the authorities. The HOA will issue fines. And you personally," she paused, savoring it, "will be held responsible." The way she said it, like she was already picturing me handcuffed, sent a chill through my spine. She wasn't bluffing. That night, I sat in my living room with the blinds drawn, replaying her words. Fines, authorities, responsible. I almost broke, but then I looked at the stack of old photos on my coffee table. Pictures from last year's block party. Kids with ice cream smeared on their cheeks, John strumming his guitar, the whole street glowing under fairy lights. That was what she was trying to erase. I couldn't let her win. The next day, I sent a message to everyone. We move forward, no fear. Saturday night, we take our street back. By Friday, excitement buzzed under the surface of our block. Kids whispered at bus stops, neighbors carried extra groceries that were really supplies, and in every garage something was being built or painted. But with the excitement came nerves, because Linda was watching. She always was. I caught her staring from across the street more than once, her phone glued to her hand. And deep down, I knew. She wasn't just going to let us have our night. The question wasn't if she'd strike back. The question was how, and the answer came faster and darker than any of us expected. By Saturday morning, it felt like the whole street was holding its breath. The sun rose, but the air felt heavier, like something bad was waiting just beyond the horizon. I woke to find a fresh envelope taped to my front door. No stamp, no mailman, just Linda's handwriting on the outside. My gut twisted before I even opened it. Inside was a single sheet. Notice of violation. Unauthorized gatherings will result in fines of $500 per household. Any attempt to obstruct HOA authority will be escalated to law enforcement. Consider this your final warning. She had bolded those last two words so hard the ink bled through the paper. By noon, nearly every house had gotten the same notice. Neighbors were pacing on their porches, holding the letters like weapons. The anger was building, but so was the fear. John marched over to my yard, his face red. "This is insane. $500? For what? Having music on our own street?" "She wants to scare us," I said quietly. "She knows if we break, she wins." But Sarah wasn't buying it. She stormed up, waving her letter. She called my boss at City Hall. "Did you know that?" She told him I was organizing something illegal. I could lose my job if this goes bad. That hit me hard. Linda wasn't just writing notices now. She was digging into our lives. And then came the police. Around 4 in the afternoon, 2 cruisers rolled slowly down our street, lights flashing but no sirens. They didn't stop. They didn't say a word. They just crawled past every house while Linda followed behind in her SUV, smiling like she was the queen of the parade. It was intimidation, pure and simple. Kids stood frozen on their driveways, clutching basketballs, watching the cars with wide eyes. Parents whispered to each other, trying to decide if this was still worth it. I gathered a few neighbors on my porch once the cruisers left. My voice shook, but I forced it steady. "Listen, she's bluffing. The police can't stop us from standing on our own street. We're not rioting. We're not breaking laws. We're just living." Mike ran his hands over his face. "But what if they do come? What if this turns into arrests or worse?" I hesitated because I had the same fear clawing at my stomach. But then I looked at the street, at the way everyone was looking at me, waiting for an answer. "She wants us scared," I said finally. "If we give in, she owns us forever. If we stand together, she has nothing." There was silence. Then Sarah spoke. "So we go louder." "Exactly," I nodded. "We make it so big, so joyful, so unstoppable that even the police can't ignore the truth. It's not a crime to be neighbors." That night, preparations hit a fever pitch. Garages glowed with work lights as people painted signs, strung up lights, and rehearsed songs. Bright fabrics were laid out, sparkling dresses pressed and ready. The whole block was alive with a secret rhythm, our rebellion dressed in color. But deep down, I knew Linda wouldn't sit quietly. She had already played her warning shots, and if she had the police in her pocket now, what would she unleash once the music started? What happened next shocked us all. Saturday night came like a storm rolling in, thick with electricity, nerves, and that strange, reckless kind of hope. As the sun dipped below the rooftops, the street began to glow, not with porch lights, but with strings of fairy bulbs stretched across driveways, lanterns dangling from mailboxes, and candles flickering in jars. It was beautiful, almost magical, but there was a bite in the air, too. Everyone knew this wasn't just a party. This was defiance. Sarah arrived first, sweeping down the street in a fiery red dress that shimmered against the night. Kids followed in bright masks and face paint, some carrying handmade signs that read, "Let us celebrate," and "Community is not a crime." Then came the music. Mike flipped the switch on his speakers, and suddenly the street came alive with rhythm. Drums, guitars, voices rising into the dark sky. It wasn't just noise. It was freedom. Neighbors poured out of their homes, dancing, clapping, cheering. For a moment, it felt like we had won. For a moment, it felt untouchable. And then Linda appeared. She marched into the street like she owned it, dressed in her usual charcoal gray blazer, a phone already in her hand. Her face was lit by the glow of the lights, but there was no joy in her eyes, just fury. "This is illegal!" she shouted over the music. "Turn it off, now!" John strummed his guitar louder. Sarah spun in her dress, laughing defiantly. The kids stomped their feet in rhythm, chanting, "Party! Party! Party!" Linda's face went red, her voice breaking. "You leave me no choice." She jabbed at her phone. "The police are on their way. Every one of you will regret this." My chest tightened, but I forced myself to smile. "Let them come," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "We're not breaking the law. We're living." And sure enough, 10 minutes later the cruisers rolled in again, this time with sirens on, lights flashing blue and red against our glowing decorations. The music didn't stop. The laughter didn't stop. But under it all, a ripple of fear passed through the crowd. An officer stepped out, hands raised. "All right, folks, what's going on here?" Linda rushed forward before anyone could answer. "Officer, thank God, these people are breaking HOA policy. They're disrupting safety, they're refusing direct orders. I demand you shut this down immediately." The officer looked at her, then at us, the kids dancing, the neighbors swaying, the signs waving in the night. His jaw tightened. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "HOA rules are not criminal law. Unless there's violence, there's nothing here for us to stop." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Sarah's sudden, wild laugh. Linda's face twisted. But they're disobeying me." And then, as if the universe wanted to make a point, Mike cranked the volume. The street erupted again with music, louder than ever, and the crowd cheered like a wave crashing. The officer gave us one last look, shrugged, and said, "Keep it safe. Keep it peaceful." Then he got back in the cruiser. The sirens cut off. The cars rolled away. For the first time that week, I felt the fear break. We were free. But Linda wasn't finished. She stood frozen in the middle of the street, shaking with rage as the music swallowed her voice. I saw her lips move, and though I couldn't hear her, I could read them clearly. This isn't over, and I should have believed her, because what she did next was darker than anything we had imagined. The night after the protest party felt like victory. My neighbors and I stood in the glow of fading lanterns, still buzzing with adrenaline. We had stared down the HOA, stared down the police, and for once the little people had won. But victories like that don't come without consequences. And Linda. She was the kind of person who turned humiliation into ammunition. The next morning, half the street woke up to citations taped to their doors. Violation. Unauthorized decoration. Fine. $200. Violation. Excessive noise. Fine. $300. Violation. Public disturbance. Fine. $400. Linda had weaponized the rulebook. It wasn't enough to cancel the party. She was trying to bankrupt anyone who stood against her. Sarah stormed into my kitchen, slamming her fine on the counter. I can't pay this, and she knows it. She's trying to bleed us dry until we crawl back and beg. "She won't stop there," John muttered. "She's embarrassed. That makes her dangerous. and he was right. By Thursday, things got darker. One by one, the lights went out on our street. Power outages, random and unexplained, but always targeting the loudest voices from Saturday night. Sarah's house, Mike's, then mine. When I called the power company, they told me the outages were scheduled maintenance. But we all knew better. One evening, while we sat on Sarah's porch lit only by candles, Linda pulled up in her SUV. She didn't even get out. Just rolled down the window, let the silence hang heavy, and said, "You think you won? I can do this all year. Let's see how long your little rebellion lasts." Then she drove off, her taillights vanishing into the dark. I won't lie, I felt fear. Real fear. It wasn't just fines anymore. It was harassment, sabotage, psychological warfare. And it was working. People who had danced in the street days earlier now whispered about backing out. A few neighbors even took down their decorations, too afraid to fight anymore. But others burned brighter. "Enough," Sarah said one night, her face lit orange by candlelight. "She can fine us. She can cut our power. But she can't take away what happened Saturday. And she sure as hell can't stop us if we stand together again." Mike nodded. "We've been playing defense. It's time we go bigger. We don't just throw another party. We turn this into something the whole city sees." That was the moment the shift happened. No more hiding. No more whispering in garages. We were going to drag the fight into the open, because Linda wanted us quiet. She wanted us small. But if we made this bigger, if we turned our protest into something undeniable, then maybe, just maybe, we could take away her power once and for all. I didn't know if it would work. I didn't know if we'd even make it through without more police, more threats, maybe even arrests. But deep down, I knew one thing. We had already tasted freedom. And once you taste it, you can't go back. So we planned. And when the night came, it wasn't just a protest. It was a war of voices, colors, and unity, and Linda. She never saw it coming. I'll never forget that night. The street glowed like a festival. Lanterns swinging in the breeze, fairy lights wrapped around mailboxes, and kids racing past in neon face paint. For a moment, you would have thought it was just another block party, except this time it felt like something more. It felt like freedom. Linda Pierce stood there in her gray blazer, clutching her phone like it was a weapon. Her face was red with rage. "This is out of order," she screamed. "You're violating HOA bylaws." Her voice cracked, trying to rise above the music and laughter, but nobody was listening anymore. I stood across from her, my heart pounding, but this time I didn't feel small. I felt strong. Around me, Sarah, in her fiery red dress, clapped in rhythm with the crowd. John strummed his guitar louder, and Mike raised his fist high, leading neighbors in chants. Even the police, standing calmly with arms folded, seemed to be enjoying the music. Linda's words faded into the background as the neighborhood drowned her out with cheer. People danced, couples twirled under the string lights, and kids held up bright homemade signs that said, "Our street, our party." I took a deep breath and looked at her one last time. "You can't cancel joy, Linda," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but somehow it cut through the noise. "This isn't just a party. It's who we are." She froze, speechless for once. Her clipboard slipped from her hands, papers scattering across the pavement. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I realized she had brought this on herself. The police finally stepped forward not to stop us but to tell her, "Ma'am, they're not breaking any laws. This is a peaceful gathering." That was the moment everything shifted. Her power cracked. The music swelled, neighbors hugged each other, and the street turned into a living painting of bright colors. Yellow lights, red dresses, blue balloons, kids waving sparklers. For once, the HOA's rules couldn't touch us. As the night went on, I found myself just standing there, soaking it in. I thought about how close we'd come to losing this tradition, how one person's hunger for control almost stole something priceless from us. And I realized something. Rules matter, but people matter more. Community, laughter, and love, those are the things worth fighting for. By midnight, Linda had stormed off into the shadows, and the rest of us stayed under the lights, singing and dancing. It wasn't just a party anymore. It was a protest, a victory, and a promise that as long as we had each other, no clipboard or rulebook could ever silence us again. And that's how a canceled block party became the night our neighborhood found its voice.